Hey there, welcome to First Look. Thank you for being here this week. And this is a special week because this one we get to cover something that I think is unique and special in the year, but is also I think really allows us to think about that term identity in a very particular way. And by that I mean that in this season, if you've been with us here at Northmont, I've been talking about October, November, this season from World Communion Sunday until Advent as our identity season. You know, we have the confessional banners that are up of our history. We have World Communion. We have things like All Saints and Reformation Sunday, and we have a couple of speakers who are coming, and we have PW Sunday and that kind of thing. But we also have Stewardship Sunday and Pledge Sunday, which go back to back. And this Sunday happens to be Stewardship Sunday. And you know, we talk about the resources that we have available to us as a church, often in different types of ways. One of the ways, of course, is we have an annual meeting every year in January where we go over how things went over the course of the past 12 months and the budget that we're putting together for the next 12 months. And then we also have things like capital campaigns. For many of us, we have contributed in one way, shape, or form to the fund that was redoing the parking lot, which went very, very well, and we're very, very happy for all those who were able to not only participate, but who led that effort. And so we talk about stewardship often, but this is the Sunday that we often that we leave to specifically address it, because we're about to make those decisions about how budget things are going to go. And sometimes when we talk about our stewardship, things are relatively the same as they were the year before. And some years they are, we have a project or something that we know is coming down the pike, and we need to be aware of that. Sometimes it's a little bit in between. Sometimes you're trying to figure out, what rainy days are coming that's hard to anticipate, but you try to get ahead of as much as you can. All those things factor in, and all those things are stuff that we talk about. And I've been fortunate enough in my time at Northmont, I think that those have all been really healthy conversations and practical conversations, but also faith-centered conversations. I know that for you, when you're thinking about what we contribute to the church, and we talk about our finances often, or the monetary stuff often, but we do also talk about when it comes to stewardship, which is a huge piece of it, that I think sometimes people tend to think we tack on there for just to kind of round out the concept. We talk about time and talents and treasures, right? But I take that very seriously, because a church that is where your stewardship, what you're, putting down on paper in terms of dollars and cents, is only one piece of a puzzle, because it wouldn't matter what our budget looked like. It wouldn't matter how much we had coming in from any direction, if we didn't have, one, any kind of vision or hope for what that did, or two, people who were willing to be a part of whatever that means. Then the first part, the treasures part, can't go as far. It may not go anywhere at all. And so that's one of the things that we talk about often, and which is why for this coming season we chose this particular passage. And when you're choosing a theme, you're trying to again think about where you've been, where you're going, what immediate needs or medium range or long range needs you have. And this year, as we talked about that, we certainly had to factor in the fact that this year was this 100th anniversary that we've been talking about now, and we're getting to the end of it. And we're getting to the place in the formation of the congregation 100 years ago where, the property that we were going to be using was being dedicated, that the T's were starting to be crossed and I's were starting to be dotted, and a congregation was really taking shape. When we started this early in the year, it was kind of a dream. It was kind of we think this could work. We think we can do this. We're going to start working on making this a reality, right? And then by October of 1925, all that dreaming and hoping and working and praying was starting to come to fruition in a worship space. And then very soon, I think by early January, the church, Highland Church, that's what it was called at the time, was formed in early 1926, officially, as a participant in the presbytery. And so all of that, I think about that journey often, which is why we did this over the course of a year, so we could kind of come back to it often. And thinking about the hard work and dedication and that it takes to do all of that, the real faith that it takes to do all of that. And the fact that the people who were starting this congregation 100 years ago, I'm sure they had to contribute or, make contributions or promises of contributions to the congregation moving forward. But they also had to show up. They also had to be really active participants in making all that happen. Because when they opened those doors and they began to worship in this place, the group of people that did so, they couldn't just do one thing. They also had to make sure that, the lights got turned on and things got swept up and the meetings happened and they had a mission and they had a direction and they knew who they were going to hire as a pastor and they knew how that was going to work, and they were thinking about what is our who will conduct our music and who will write our liturgy and it's what will we do for our first Easter, and those are all things that had to happen to make this congregation a living, breathing thing. And so one of the things that I think contributes the most to that is the acquisition and use of the wisdom, the collective wisdom that we have all around us. And so the passage that we chose for this Sunday is reflective of that idea. And so we took this passage, a pretty famous passage from 1 Kings chapter 3, the first 15 verses, 1 Kings chapter 3. And it talks about Solomon becoming king. And the passage, which I'll read in a second, is famous because it recognizes kind of the how we what we ask of ourselves, what we ask of God, and what takes priority when it comes to how we understand how to be faithful. So I'm gonna I'll read the passage now, and then we can talk about it here. So again, 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 1 through 15. Solomon made a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people were sacrificing at the high places. However, because no house had yet been built for the name of the Lord, the temple. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of his father David only. he sacrificed and offered incense at the high places. The king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the principal high place. And Solomon offered, or used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on the altar. And at Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask for whatever it is that you want, and I will give it to you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant by my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in the place of my father, although I am only a child, only a little child. I do not know how to go out and come in. Your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous that they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this, your great people?" And it pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. And God said to him, "Because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches, for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall arise after you. And I will give you also what you have not asked for, both riches and honor all your life. No other king shall compare to you. And if you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your life." And then Solomon awoke. It had been a dream. He came to Jerusalem, where he stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and he offered up burnt offerings and offerings of well-being, and provided a feast for all of his servants. I think when you take into consideration all the things that came before him, I think that the answer that Solomon gives is even more profound. David, of course, had come into his kingdom, his kingship, in the most wild and controversial and difficult kinds of circumstances. Him succeeding a king that was not yet dead, that he wasn't in line for, and the amount of turmoil and everything that caused. And David, of course, becomes a great king, and even in all the righteousness and things that he's talked about here, David was certainly not without his faults. Did a lot of things that were unpleasing to God, and that were difficult, made the lives of people around him difficult, and just lots of different hardships. And David and his family, including Solomon, had a lot of enemies and had a lot of controversy and had a lot to deal with on their plate. And they had these tribes that were held together seemingly by duct tape and glue. They were trying to make into one people and one nation, and one kind of community. And so, given all those things, Solomon could have certainly asked for a lot of different types of things, like a gift. Make these people this way, make these people that way. Give me strength, or riches, or long life, or make me the most powerful, or give me angel wings. I mean, he could have asked for all sorts of things. But asking for wisdom and discernment is not so much of a gift as it is a tool. As I think you heard me say, if you read or heard the sermon I gave this past week, what I talked about was this working definition of wisdom that I use, which is intelligence put to godly use. And so intelligence is something that you can have. That's a gift. He could have asked for great intelligence. Lots of people I know have great intelligence. A lot of people in government and politics have great intelligence. A lot of people in science have great intelligence. A lot of people who are teachers or doctors or have great intelligence. But wisdom is knowing what to do with that is satisfying to the will of God. Godly use means something beyond yourself. It means not just what will satisfy you or will make you better or stronger or richer or whatever, but will help impact the lives of people around you through means of justice or reconciliation or fairness or safety. Those are the types of things that we're talking about. And so that wisdom means don't just give me the intelligence, but guide me when it comes to actively participating in all those gifts that you give me. And that's a pretty amazing thing, because it doesn't put all of the weight on the shoulders of God to kind of come through, but it puts a lot of the weight on himself. He's willing to say, all I really want is to be guided by you, because I want to make the right decisions for the people in front of me. And God was able to say, this is a wonderful answer, and I will give you more than you asked. And some of that would have to be true because of the things that I'm sure God could see that Solomon was going to do with that wisdom. And I think that's certainly the lesson for us when it comes to almost anything that we think about, any of the gifts that we have in our life. I saw some kind of like sometimes you'll see like there's things on social media or on a t-shirt or something that are kind of inspirational. And I came across this one a few days ago that was talking about like this person who had a similar kind of conversation with God and trying to discern what it is that they should ask for. And in this imaginary conversation with God, it was, if someone asked for patience, God would give them, many situations in which they could be patient. If someone asked for bravery, God would give them lots of situations where they could be brave. If God asked for, strength or compassion or humility, again, God would put them in situations or, open them up to opportunities to use those skills. Because all of those things take, using what God has given you over and over and over again. And I think similarly, we might pray that for health and well-being, let's say. If I'm praying for my own health and well-being, well, God's, I think, going to put me in plenty of situations where I can make healthy decisions and give me the opportunities to be healthy or healthier. If I ask for, a good if I pray that I would have a worthwhile career, that God would put me in situations where I could work towards that, or to be a good parent or spouse or whatever. Opportunities for growth would be there for me. And so my job then is to recognize them and to try to live into them. And, I think anything like that you read or see in a Facebook post or a social media something or other, anything, any kind of quick wisdom like that, or can be, you can punch some holes in. But I think that it certainly holds true to what I think discipleship is supposed to look like. That part of what Solomon is asking for is the help and capacity to be a faithful disciple. And so, when we think about our church, or if they thought about the church 100 years ago, I think part of what they really were praying for, when they were starting it or were continuing it, is the wisdom, the thoughtfulness, the strength, the humility, the tenacity, the compassion that it takes to be the kind of church that people would want to be a part of. Because, the finances being, whatever they are from year to year, will always present some kind of limitation or challenge or opportunity or whatnot. But the most amazing churches that I know, the ones that people really thrive in, the ones that, allow people to experience God's love in new ways, aren't always or often really the churches that have the largest endowments or the most amount of financial resources, but are the places that are rich in the time and talents part, in people who are willing to give of themselves and their time and their effort, but also who show up for the other people who are there. We don't take for granted the fact that, if you're at this church now, that you would want to be a year from now or 5 years from now or whatever. And because the only way you want to be in any congregation for the long term is because it keeps reminding you, the people keep reminding you of why you're there in the first place. And, there are people who, in this church who, are new and who bring different ideas, and we are so excited and encouraged by their participation. And, the reason that they're here is not because they heard one good sermon or they heard, they saw one good program or whatever, but because over time something was there for them that made them feel like they had found their place. And I think that part of what we try to do in stewardship is that we recognize that every year we recognize, well, yes, of course we have to, we have the lights to keep on, and we have a per capita, and we have, a choir, and we have staff, and we have, buildings and boilers and pavement and snow shoveling, all those practical things, and all those things are important elements of that. But part of what we also try to recommit ourselves to is how will I personally try to make this church a place where people would want to be, either want to stay or want to join. And that takes that's where the time and talents comes in. It is coupled with what we offer monetarily. And so I think this week, as we're kind of thinking about stewardship and we're thinking about how we participate in that, my hope is that along the way, that enriching element of what makes stewardship so important is at the forefront of your mind, because it's certainly at the forefront of mine. Your quality of life, your quality of the love and experience that you have in a place is, has no price tag. And I think that that's the kind of thing that we need to be encouraging and celebrating and trying to remember as, you put that pledge, you just deposit that pledge. That's what you're kind of committing yourself to, is what do I think about this place, and how do I imagine it continuing to be a place that other people would find important and find as sanctuary for them. So that's my hope this week. And I hope that we get a little bit clearer sense of who we are as we do that. Okay. Well, that's what I have for this time. Please go over again what the author of 1 Kings has for us. I hope that Solomon and his decision is something you can kind of ruminate over in the next couple of days. If anyone needs anything, I hope that you will ask. I hope to see as many of you as who can be there tomorrow evening for Amos. We're having chili, so please be there for that. I'm very grateful for all the ways that you participate in the life of Northmont, and I will see you next time for another First Look. So until then, take care.